Hi, my name is Joe Kenney, and my connection with Incarnation was 51 years of my life, the first 51. And I didn't think that was much until I realized that's over half the time frame we're talking about for the whole parish. I was born in 1937 and I moved out of here in 1988.
Sure.
Good.
Great.
I didn't do very well in arithmetic in grade school. I graduated from the grade school in 1951, so that's kind of a frame of reference. I grew up, obviously, in the 40s at Incarnation. I started in kindergarten and finished in 8th grade. I went on to De La Salle High School for 4 years, class of 55. Married in 1959 over at St. Stephen's, and my wife Susan and I bought a house in Incarnation in 1960, and we raised 5 kids who all went through Incarnation grade school and had all their sacraments here, so we had kind of a long history of being involved with the parish. That's kind of where I come from. Currently we're members at St. Albert the Great, and the attraction there is Father Joe Gillespie, who is also an alumnus of Incarnation Grade School and De La Salle High School, and a classmate of my younger brother for those 12 years. And so I felt a connection with him, and when I found he was there, we chose to go over there, and we went there 3 years ago. Well, I think about a lot of things. I think about the early years, grade school. Sister, I wrote all these names down last night too. Sister Lucian and the paper sales during World War II. We would have paper sales 3 or 4 times a year, and she always let me help her load the papers in the truck. Probably the littlest kid in the class, but I got to do that anyway. And so I just thought that was the greatest thing that could happen. And I have great memories of helping her. I served as an altar boy here for whatever, 4 or 5 years, and through 8th or 9th grade. And I remember the Christmases and the Easter liturgies, the really big events, and we'd have 30 or 40 altar boys, and we'd have fancy white cassocks and surplices and collars, starch collars, and big red bows and red sashes. And I can picture that to this day when I walk in here. I thought we were the greatest thing that could come along. That was really a great honor, it turned out to be that that involved in the liturgies here. And then the big thing I think that happens is, the best thing would be in the 1960s, the mid to late 60s. I was a young parent then, a young adult. We had perhaps 3 kids by then. Father Bob Cassidy was here as an associate, and he put together musical productions, Broadway musical productions with the high school kids in the summertime. And I thought he just did a great job. And then he left us to go to be the principal of Holy Angels in Ridgefield. And it just seemed to me that it didn't make sense that we closed up these facilities for 3 months in the summer. We the parishioners paid to support them and heat them and maintain them and all of that. And we just let it sit locked up. And so I went to the parish council, young and idealistic and with no idea what in the world we'd do. And I proposed that we should start a summer program so we could keep going what Father Cassidy had started. And I suddenly was a producer of musicals, and I didn't know a music note from anything else. And so mostly I was the promoter and the recruiter. But we expanded that to be a summer program. We worked with 5 churches, 2 Catholics and 2 Lutherans and a Baptist church. And we worked together to run this summer program for 3 summers. And that was in the late 60s, and that would be, in today's terminology, that would have been a great ecumenical effort. At the time, it seemed like a logical thing to do in a neighborhood. We called it Summer 68 because that was the first year. And we just kept that kind of corporate name to keep track of our books and that sort of thing. And we hired someone to be the coordinator, the director of the whole thing. We had a gentleman from Central High School who was a teacher and a coach over there. And he just did a great job for us. And we paid him very little money because the churches didn't have much money. And he did a great job. And we hired a professional from the Guthrie Theater to be the director of the plays, because I sure didn't know where to begin. And it was a music director at Judson Baptist Church who was music director over there, who became music director for our plays. So we had very good professional leadership on those, and I just managed to get ushers and sell tickets. That has to, I guess that has to be the highlight of my life here. But it was the 50s, late 50s and the 60s that were the most exciting times and the most frustrating times and unsettling times for Incarnation. It had been such a noble parish. Everybody either were bragged that they had come from Incarnation or wished they had been here. We did beautiful liturgies and we had wonderful music, and we had children falling out of the doors and windows of the school. We couldn't keep a building built big enough to hold all of the families that sent their kids here. And it was just a great prospering church. And then along came Vatican II, and a lot of things began to change. And it was a tumultuous time to live in, but it was also, and it was a time of chaos, because all of the things that we always did and all of the way the church did things suddenly was being challenged. And some people loved the opportunity for change. Some others hated to see what was happening to their church. And then a whole lot of people were lost in the middle of it, wondering what's happening and where we're going to end up. And the liturgies, of course, were the first that were changed around. It was in the 50s that we started doing the Saturday, the Easter Vigil. Prior to that, we had a very private service of washing, or of blessing the water and the candle. It would be the priests and 2 or 3 altar boys on a Saturday morning, and nobody would be there. And then Sunday morning, everything was done. And we suddenly, in the church, said, no, this should be the biggest celebration of the year. And out came the Easter Vigil in the liturgy. And then, of course, there was the turning the altar around, and there was the church switching to the vernacular. Suddenly our Latin Mass was English, and that certainly confused a lot of people. It was easier, I think, for a lot of people to kneel in the pews and say the rosary while the priest mumbled Latin. And here, lo and behold, the priest is facing us, he's speaking in English, so we know what's being said, and we're expected to respond and participate. And that was hard for a lot of people. It was a great freedom for a lot of us to something new that we understood, but for others it was their tradition that was being challenged.
So there
were some responses, but only if you knew the language, which we didn't. You know, the responses were "Et cum spiritu tuo," that was about it. And the people knew that, and they uttered those words, and they didn't really know what they were saying. And I thought it was just great that we were hearing, understanding what we were hearing, and we were responding, and understanding our response.